All right, Barbara, what we're going to do today is we're going to take you through interpretation of a chart and understanding aspects of their meaning. I'm not one to read signs on the cusp so much, or house positions and total interpretation. I'm looking first for aspects in a chart. It's the most important thing in a chart. More important than anything you can do. There's one exception to that rule, might be what I'm going to teach you now, and that's how you understand Mars and its chart. Mars is a planet that's very easy and specific, and it gives you an ability to see things that are very concretely real for that person that you're dealing with. And that means that in my daughter's case, where she always sends me birth times of her boyfriends, she's never been married, she's 36 I think, but she's never married, and she's learned to listen to me about boyfriends because I usually tell her right, and she ends up saying, I should have listened to you, Dad. So in the last two boyfriends that she had, the first one, his name was James, and he had when I did his chart, I told her, I said, he's got two things. He's got a bad afflictions with Saturn in his chart, and he's got arthritis. And the second thing he has a very bad scar on his head somewhere. And it should have been a very pronounced scar. Well, she didn't know of either one of those things, so she was laying on the couch with him one day after I'd given her this information, and a lot of other information as well, but this specific, very specific information, because he had heavy Mars affliction in Aries, which I knew he had something wrong to scar or wounds on his head. So she's on the couch with him, and she rubs her hands through his hair, and she doesn't feel anything. And she finally said to him, said, Jim, she said, do you have a scar on your head? He says, oh my gosh, yeah. He said, I've had 40 stitches in my head. He said, I had a car accident, ripped my skull almost off. And she said, well, do you have arthritis? And he said, well, yeah. He said, I used to play professional tennis, and I had it so bad I had to quit playing tennis. And he said, how do you know all that? Why are you asking me these questions? Where are you getting that from? And she said, my dad told me. And so, of course, he was about freaked out. The last boyfriend, which she now is with, she had asked me to do a reading on it. I did. And I saw a strong likelihood that he was a lawyer, which he was. And I saw a lot of other things in his chart, a little bit controlling, very insecure in relationships, things like that. He had a Saturn-Venus affliction by square, which shows that he doubts his attractability and his ability to maintain a relationship, and he's very insecure with his relationships. And she told me how he just before that had said, before I gave her the reading, had said that he had said to her, do you really love me? You know, and she says, because she had surgery on her knee and she hadn't been intimate with him for a few days, and he interpreted that as a lack of love. And I had also said in the reading that he interprets sex as affection. To him, that shows love. He finds that that's, to him, amounts to that. So anyway, but I also said he had a bad burn on his leg. And that's what freaked him out, because he was very skeptical of all of this astrology until she confronted him with that. And actually I was on the phone with him at the time, and he didn't want to look in the camera when I was on him. I was talking to him on Skype. And but when I told him he had a scar on his leg, he had a bad burn on his leg when he was young. I told him it happened to him when he was young. And of course that set him up to acknowledge the accuracy of the reading, that was something that he knew I couldn't have known. Now, what do I tell you all that? I tell it to you to say that I want you to understand some of these things about Mars. Mars is a real good marker in a chart. It's Mars marks, Mars scars, Mars wounds, if it's afflicted particularly. It doesn't have to be an affliction if it's in the first house. Very often I find people with Mars in the first house have injuries to the head or face, okay, or scars, Mars, scars. All those things that are related to that, okay? So Mars afflicted in Aries or in the first house, it can be the same thing. Aries rules the first house. And look for injuries, scars, marks, birthmarks to the head and face. Also, the personality, if Mars is rising, may be tough and rough, aggressive, assertive, Can be, okay? One other thing about Aries. Aries in a chart is usually interpreted as aggressive. But I have found after many, many decades of study that Aries is not always aggressive. Aries sometimes is the lamb of God. It's not the ram. It's the submissive, sacrificial lamb. And very often Aries people, we say your son's in Aries, very often Aries people will have both possibilities. So you have to be careful about asserting that all Aries are aggressive and all Aries are pushy and assertive. They're not always. Sometimes they're just the opposite. They're very submissive. And you never will know, generally just from the chart. It's something I can not always pick up from the chart until I sit down with them, and then I kind of pick that energy up. So Mars afflicted in Taurus, okay, or in the second house, okay. Injuries, scars to the throat. If tonsils removed, possible fight or anger over property in life. I have Mars in the second house. I've had my tonsils removed when I was young, which is the throat, Taurus, okay? Now my Mars isn't in Taurus, it's in Pisces, but it's in the second house, okay? So, okay, Mars afflicted in Gemini, or in the third house, for example. Look for injuries, scars, or on the arms or hands, or even the lungs. I really advise people that have Mars in Gemini not to smoke, because it can cause scarring and damage and potentially cancer of the lungs. You see, wounds to the lungs, because what's the third house? Gemini? So we're talking about third house and Gemini now. Okay, we're talking about Aries and the first house, Taurus and the second house. So if you see Mars in those places, you can generally come up with something that's pretty accurate, okay? Okay. Also, if it's in the third house, remember Mars is conflict and war. It's fighting. And third house in Gemini rules brothers and sisters. Okay, so it can be several possibilities. I've been reading sometimes, and I said you've had I remember doing a psychic fair, and a woman was sitting there, I said you've had a brother that was killed. I got that specific information from that. Okay, why? Because it's just something that came through me. But the brother in Mars and violence and all that, okay? And of course she was from South America, and her brother had been shot to death in a gang thing. So okay, so it could be brother or sister though, because, okay. So it shows conflict possibly during their lifetime, and it also, Mars afflicting Mercury or afflicting Mercury or in Gemini or third house can produce speech defects. Okay, marring Mars, the speech, Mercury, okay? Okay, so it can produce stuttering at some point in your life, for example, stuttering, which I did, and I got Mars square Mercury in my chart. And
I was a stutterer too.
Were you? Yeah, Mars afflicting
time.
Mercury? What do you have in your chart? Do you remember?
Mars is in my fourth house in Virgo, and my Mercury is 00 Scorpio. So
That's not aspected, is it?
No.
How about?
Scorpio and Virgo, no, really isn't.
Yeah, is it at the end of the sign and the beginning of another sign though?
Well, Scorpio is 00, for one thing.
What's there?
Mars is
What's 0 Scorpio?
Mercury.
Okay, so it's the end. It's the end of Libra, right? Okay, so if that puts it almost the 30 degrees of Libra, if it's 0 to Scorpio, right? It's in that orb of the influence. So what do you?
Mars is, I think it's 9 degrees of Virgo. It's Virgo.
Oh, Virgo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it really doesn't aspect it.
Okay, I'd have to look at the chart and see why there is that, you know. That's interesting, because that often will bring that. Mars afflicted in Cancer in the fourth house, look for injuries, scars, birthmarks to the breast or the stomach. Can produce ulcers, conflict in the home with the family, particularly the wife and mother, possibly fires in the home, okay? So, you know, that's important in the birth chart. So, you know, you need to start looking at the harsh planets, Mars, and see what it's doing. It's a real good indicator of things you can pick up pretty quick. The other thing is Saturn. Saturn is the skeletons in the closet, as they say. I used to see, when I was in prison, I would be talking to people, doing their charts, and I would see Saturn in the 8th house, or in Scorpio, for example. And I would say, you know, there's something in your past that you don't want to talk about, and it involves death. And somebody would say, you know, I killed somebody, this, you know, whatever, I did something, you know, and nobody knows about it, I got away with it, you know, and I say, yeah, it's skeleton in the closet, right? Saturn rules your skeletal frame, teeth, the bones, okay? So Saturn is skeletons in the closet. Wherever you find it in the chart, it can represent that. For example, I have Saturn in my 4th house, and there's a lot of skeletons in my closet regarding my early life, my childhood, things like that. Things that I don't like to talk about, you know? So,
I have it in my 5th.
your 5th. Could be anything. Could be affairs, could be, you know, romance, could be things that you did you probably wouldn't talk about when you were younger. And it involves romance and love affairs and all that, see? So I'm sure if we wanted to probe, we could go further with that, see? Okay, that's something that you wouldn't want to talk about, though. That's Saturn. It doesn't want it. It denies it, right? I deny that. I wouldn't want to talk about that.
Right.
See where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It also reflects your teenage years, which would have been extraordinarily rebellious. Okay, the teenage years. Why? Because that's in the 5th house of the teenage period of your life. You'd have been very active, probably even sexually, maybe, at that point in your life, because that's Mars in that house.
No, I was active and did all kinds of stuff, but sexually, no.
No, just rebellious.
Libra. I wanted to be in love.
There you go. So, anyway, so we don't want to go there. But the point of it is that when you see Saturn in a chart, you can usually tell areas where there's something that people don't want to discuss or don't want to. They're not too proud of. Okay, it's something that we also deny often. Okay, areas that we want to deny. Like I don't like to even recall my early childhood. It was so bad. That period of my life, you know, I don't like to reminisce about it or anything. A lot of people have good memories. That period of my life, I had terrible memories of my early childhood. So anyway, so just to get you started with this is only one thing. The other side of this is the aspects. If you have a chart and you see in a chart that a person has, let's say it could be opposition, it could be square, it doesn't matter, anything on a cross, or 45 degrees, which is half of a square, right?
Okay.
Any of these, this is 45, and this is 90 degrees. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you had, let's just assume you got Mars squaring the moon in a chart, okay?
Okay.
What would you interpret that to be? How would you see that?
Anger.
Good. That's one word, but there's 2 planets. Why can't you make it more specific than that? What kind of anger?
Caused by something emotional.
Good. Emotional outburst would be good, right?
Emotional outburst. Fighting with your mother.
Good, good. Anger towards the mother.
Anger towards the mother.
Good, good, good. Maybe women in general.
Women in general.
Moon.
Moon, yeah.
Okay, okay. It could be also, for example, somebody that's, let's say a wife is mothering a husband, being kind of, you know, trying to be a mother to the husband. That could produce anger. You see what I mean? Don't treat me like a child. You know what I mean? You hear that?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is the child in us, the moon. All right? So, we have immature.
If it was Pluto.
If what was Pluto?
If Mars was square Pluto.
Well, let's not go there yet. I want you.
Okay.
You're not even done with this. I want you to carry this through. Okay. I want more interpretations. You're doing a chart now.
Okay.
You got a Mars square moon. I want to know what you're going to tell somebody. What do you see in that? That's what I'm trying to get you to do. Not some quick little thing, you know, anger towards the mother, or emotional outburst. Those are 2 things right there. What about the physical meaning of that?
Physical meaning of that would mean that if it was a woman, she could have problems with her breast,
Okay.
her stomach area.
Okay. Why just a
she
woman
could-
now?
Because of the moon, I'm thinking like Mars, she could have a burn on her body, her breast,
Could
surgery,
scar or some
surgery.
Could be. Also, scars are not always inflicted. It could be birthmarks. Right.
Yeah.
That's a mark or scar. Okay. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't always know exactly how it manifests. Sometimes I do. I'll talk to a client now. I see something specific, and I say you should have a scar on your breast, and it's a birthmark. Okay. And so, but carry that on. It could be a man. What would you tell a man?
Okay, if it was a man, that he would maybe have anger towards women.
Okay, we did
And
that.
his mother, okay, and that he is,
Do you think you could tell somebody that as a client sitting in front of you?
I don't
No.
know. I would say,
No.
how is your relationship with your mother?
Yeah, you know, I would say it this way. There's a strong indication that you had a lot of issues with your mother that may have been anger related.
Okay.
Okay, there are a lot of indications, I would say. You got to be careful about being, you know, stepping on somebody really hard with something, because first of all, if it's the moon, it's a lot of repressed stuff. It's a subconscious, remember that? So when you jump on them and you start saying, you know, you had a lot of anger toward your mothers, they're going to possibly resent that, and they're going to also, it's so repressed they don't want to deal with it. You see what I mean? You got to walk gingerly around things like this. You can't just jump out there with it. It's okay to ask a question, yes, that's one way, but to say, very often when I see this aspect, there's been a lot of anger issues revolving around the mother. You hear what I'm saying? So I'm not laying it on them where they have to acknowledge it right away. I'm just letting them consider this. And generally they'll come back and say, oh, well, yeah, there has been a lot of that in my life. You know, my mother is very controlling. My mother is this. My mother, you know, divorced my father. I never got over it. You know, things like that. You see, so the message will come out. But you have to be careful how you approach a client. You can't get dogmatic. That's why I told you the first day I ever give you an instruction in the classes, don't say it's always. Remember I said that to you?
Mm-hmm.
It's so you walk gingerly around things, and yet sometimes you may go right in with, as I always say, you might go right in for the jugular. But I don't do that always, but I sometimes do if I'm real firmly convinced, because I got enough aspects saying something. I might just go right through it. But back to the man. You're still talking to the man about this Mars square moon. What would you think? What would you see?
That there was an indication that he
Physical, make it physical. What kind of...
I'm trying to think physical. I keep thinking of the woman. Physical, that he had a possibility of being burned in his life.
Where's burned?
Mars.
Yeah, but you know, first of all, let me say this. Here's where I'd go with that, okay? First of all, the moon rules the stomach. The moon rules the digestive system.
Okay.
The Mars rules acidic. It's acid. It burns, okay? Yeah, in that sense. When I did my daughter's boyfriend, I said he has stomach problems and over acidic stomach, which can cause ulcers and everything. And so she said back to me, he can't even eat meat because he has acid reflux, and he can't handle acidic foods. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I hit that exact, but why did I do it? Because of this aspect, okay? You see what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, Mars squaring Moon. Moon rules sleep, as well as Neptune. But Moon rules sleep, it's your unconscious. So I would generally, when I find this, I often find people have trouble sleeping. A lot of conflict. Their minds are overactive at night. Okay? Okay? Especially if it's Mars squaring Mercury, adds to that, okay? If it's afflicting Mercury, Mercury's the mind. I know, you know, I have that aspect, so I mean, it takes a lot to get me, I have to wear myself out to get to sleep, because my mind's so active. I'll lay there and just be thinking and thinking about all sorts of things, and I don't quiet down very quick, my mind.
This would show a difficult home life also, because Moon is the home.
Could be.
You're fighting with people in the house.
Could be. A lot of conflict in the home area. Okay, and remember the moon rules the early childhood, the earliest childhood, the formative years of your life. So there also may have been, I find with this aspect very often that a child at a very early age ran very high fevers at one point or another, and life could have even been threatened by that. You see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because that's the child, the baby, the moon. Okay. I have seen. I remember once doing a chart with the. Actually, it was my ex-wife's ex-boyfriend. She was with quite a long time, and I did his chart, and I told him that he had something happened in childbirth that may have injured him, and I thought it was a cut or something. And what happened was when he was born by cesarean, and the doctor, when he cut the cesarean, did the cut, he cut the baby's face, which was this boy, young man now, a young man, and he still had a residual scar from that, from the child when he was born. So Mars, okay, so it can be the mother experienced a lot of trouble and possible pain in childbirth. That's potential too. So again, that's looking at the mother, the moon. Okay. All right. So far you've given me emotional kind of thing. You got to remember that the soul, the subconscious, is the moon. So it means that there's a lot of deep unconscious conflict, and in a chart, it very often indicates sexual conflict. Okay, why? Mars rules all that. Okay, the desires, the passions, and Mars afflicting the moon can be compulsive problems. Okay, compulsive sexual need, for example, compulsive eating, compulsive desire to do things excessively. Okay, that's Mars. Okay, just give you some ideas of this. Okay, so okay. So we're talking about the moon, we're talking about emotions, right? Okay, and we're talking about Mars, which is, what do we say about Mars and Aries? It's what? What's the main word with it?
Aggressive.
Good, impulsive.
Impulsive.
Right, they jump before they act, right? I mean, they act before, they jump too fast, they don't think things through. So right away you've got an interpretation. Mars moon is what? Emotionally compulsive. Okay, we're also talking about emotionally impulsive. Both of those words are pretty much related almost, okay? So we also know that when we see that kind of an aspect in a chart, that there can be immaturity about that issue that square opposition makes. That these aspects are stress aspects that are aggravated by the immaturity of that moon. The moon is immature. It's a child in us, okay? It's a child that needs nurturing. What does a child need when he's crying, when he's a baby?
He needs nurturing, yeah.
He needs what?
Nurturing.
Nurturing,
love,
right.
Mothering.
Okay. Good. So he goes to the mother's breast, gets some milk, and he stops crying, and next time he cries, his mother picks him up, puts him back to the breast. So we associate what? Food with comfort, okay? With solace, that brings us back to a state of equilibrium, okay? And offsetting our conflict in life. So a person that has that aspect is constantly seeking comfort in something that's represented by that planet. And very often in that chart, when you see Mars, it's sex. Okay? I will get comfort from my emotional pains, and it's also food. Okay? Okay, and in case of Mars, by the way, I might tell you, Mars rules acidic foods. It rules meat. It rules things. Mars, muscle of stuff. Okay, so they can be big, seeking out meat a lot in their life. Okay, okay, not likely to be vegetarian with that aspect. You see it?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You see all the dimensions of this? I mean, we're just talking about one aspect. All we've spent 20 minutes on, and we haven't covered it. Okay. But what I'm giving you is to start to look at the depths of the meaning. Don't look at these simple little, oh, Mars, anger towards the mother, or emotional outburst. Yeah, those are all good things to know, and but there's so many more dimensions. If they're, you know, it can be stomach problems that results from over acidic foods, eating too much meat, eating too many things that are acidic. Okay, most people think juices and, you know, are acidic, you know, orange juices, things like that. But that's not real acidic. If you know anything about food and diet, you know that's not the case. The acidic foods are not those at all. They're the foods like meat and, you know, and even chicken and all those other things. So, okay, so we got the moon, we got the subconscious, and you know that Mars is what? Conflicts. So we got subconscious conflicts. Okay, I mean that's pretty simple. This is all in your textbook. Nobody takes time to read this, but it was in your workbook I gave you.
Right.
Okay, so, okay, deep-seated anger. Why deep-seated?
Because it's your deep emotions.
Your subconscious.
Yeah.
We're not in touch with it usually. Okay, that's why I say you got to be careful when you get in this area, because a lot of people don't recognize or don't understand that they've got all that. The only way that it comes out is when they get extraordinarily angry, and you get an emotional outburst that unveils all this hidden and intense, repressed, because Moon Saturn is repressed anger. People that have that aspect tend to repress their anger, because the Moon doesn't want to express it. It wants to push it down. It wants to shove it all down deep inside. And then when it does come forth, comes forth with a lot of immaturity generally and with an extraordinary outburst. And then you say, oh, I didn't know you felt that way all this time. You know?
Oh.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know you felt. What does the felt mean? What's felt mean?
The emotion of it.
The moon.
Yeah,
I feel.
The moon, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I didn't know you had all or felt all that anger towards me. You see where I'm coming from?
And the emotions here would come from their childhood too.
A lot of it is from their childhood experiences that they're bringing into the current times. And so they push it all down. Cancers are real good at repressing anger, repressing emotions. Even though we think of it as an emotional sign, they can be very repressive signs, indicators, okay? Okay, so we talked about, Mars is compulsions, it's your habit patterns. I mean, excuse me, the moon is your compulsions. It's your habit patterns, it's things you've developed that are in the unconscious. Make you do things that you don't even consciously understand the reason for, but you always give, the conscious mind's always going to give a rational reason for it. Conscious mind can't understand irrationality. So if you do something irrational, it's going to find a reason for it. It's going to give a quick rational reason. When I hypnotized somebody in the Navy and I told him he was going to rip his jumper pocket off of his jumper, that's a very irrational suggestion I put into his subconscious mind. But when I did that and I gave him the suggestion, I said, when Mike scratches his nose, you will tear that jumper pocket off your jumper. Now, that was an old jumper and had a rip about 1/4 of an inch on the jumper, and I didn't mind ripping it up because I knew it didn't matter. I wasn't destroying a good piece of, you know, Navy jumper. But the point being, when we stood around and talked for a while, he didn't remember anything because I told him he wouldn't. And I was talking to him with some of the things he did, you know, and finally Mike reached up, scratched his nose, and he looked like the guy needed a cigarette and didn't have one. Just real irritated. You could tell he was just agitated. Finally, he kept looking down, finally he just rips that jumper pocket off. And I said, why did you do that, Mom? You know, whatever, I forget his name now, it's been years ago. I said, why did you do that? Oh, I got tired of looking at the damn thing, it was ripped about that far. So he came back with a rational explanation as quick as I could ask it. And that's how people do a lot of things that are irrational, but they have an explanation for it. They always do. Well, I was drunk when I did it. You know, in prison I used to see that. Guys that do terrible things, and you ask them why they do it. Oh, society made me do it. Or, you know, they did this to me and I just had enough of it. You know what I mean? They always find a reason, an excuse, a quick rational reason for what they did. Even though it's very irrational, sometimes deadly irrational, you see. Okay, so go back to the physical. Okay, if we've got an over-acidic potential with the moon, what does that mean physically? Tell me.
Over-acidic potential with the moon.
Yeah, Mars afflicting the moon.
Physically,
Yeah.
you would have stomach problems.
What kind?
Acidic, you would have ulcers.
That's what I wanted from you. Okay.
Ulcers?
Potential.
Potential
It's
ulcers.
kind of interesting though. They have discovered that ulcers are caused by bacteria. Would you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
Which is surprising because, you know, we always thought it was something else. But
You always have
What-
those nerves.
yeah, but what actually triggered that? You know, what allows it to happen? The acidic breakdown of the membrane of the stomach, which breaks down and causes ulcers. But the whole point I'm getting at is, in my daughter's boyfriend's case, I saw something regarding that, but I didn't realize exactly when she said he has acid reflux. I thought, wow, I would have never thought about that specifically as a problem, but that's something that would fit this to the bill. Okay?
Mhm.
All right, good. Okay. So, okay, the other thing is, remember, whenever you look at the moon, you look at the child, the immaturity of a person. Okay? So, Mars rules what? Physically.
Physically, your head.
Okay, I didn't,
Your
I
head.
mean your actions. It rules what?
Your physical exertion, what you
Good.
physically do,
Good.
how you work, how you
How about sex?
sex,
Very much so.
yeah.
So,
The aggression of sex too.
exactly. So, aggression and all these things, fighting, all that stuff. So, here we have a potential for immature sexually. You see what I'm saying? Things that show a lack of maturity in terms of his behavior in regard to that. You see what I'm saying? So it's like Mercury afflicting the moon can be the fool. Did you know that? Yeah, because that's foolish in speech, Mercury. Okay, it's like somebody playing in Vegas blackjack, and they win a good hand, and they start screaming and yelling and acting like a fool. You've seen them, I've seen them, we've all been there, right? To me, that's so foolish, because the next few hands are going to lose anyway, so what's it?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's
But
right.
they're so emotional and so childlike and so baby-like, and a lot of it because they're drinking, so that helps bring out that unconscious stupidity.
Right.
But you see a lot of immaturity, and that is very often, I call it I don't always do it in a class because I don't want to offend anybody, because somebody might look at their chart and say, oh, I got the moon square Mercury, or I got the moon opposing Mercury. But it is called, and my teacher taught me that, Percy John Newman, said it's an aspect of a fool. And so, because the mind is befuddled by the emotions, you see what I mean? And it tends to make immature behavior, which is the moon. The moon's your child in you, all right? Likes to, cry and act crazy and do all that. So, okay, and the last thing I would say about it is emotional outburst. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, let's say you're a woman and you're looking at a man's chart, you say, geez, I think he'd be a great husband. But then you happen to see this aspect. What are you going to do? You're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to recognize there's a lot of repressed stuff there.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So it's kind of protective, isn't it?
And yeah, and that might even be directed at you because it's moon. He has an anger towards women.
Women, exactly. Good for you. So we've only taken one aspect, one stress aspect and done it. I'm trying to get you to think deeper than the surface stuff. I don't want you to be one of these readers, astrology, readers that sits there and does all this superficial crap. Forgive me for the word, but to me, they have no depth of understanding. You need to have that depth. You need to go further than just some simple little surface thing. Okay. You want it to get specific. You want to see into the soul and the body of that individual. That's what you're looking to see. And so, you're also looking at the environment that person was in their early childhood, for example. That's an environmental issue. You're looking at the parents of the chart when you look at that, okay? So, somebody that has Mars squaring Moon may be like to be a toughie or a bully too, okay, towards the weaker. Why? Because the Moon is it's pure receptive, it's feminine, it's receptive, and so you have somebody that could be a bully, okay? Not necessarily are, but they could be very strong. That aspect would make it likelier, I think, than some aspects would. So when you're doing these charts, I want you to stop looking at just this simple little thing of emotional,
Keywords, right?
Yeah.
Keywords. You want me to look past
I want
the
you to see
keywords.
deeper, yeah. And when we say emotional conflict, that's great. It is emotional conflict, okay? And that's what that aspect represents. But it's so much more. It's impulsive. It's conflict. It's anger, yes, but it's physically manifests itself in maybe immature sexually, and the way they are acting out their aggression as well. They can be very childlike in the way they get angry and the way they behave with people. It's an immature aspect. Anything with the moon is always immaturity. You're dealing with stuff from way back, early childhood, okay? That's deep in their souls. It's something, okay? So let's go to Moon and Mercury real quick, and let's just assume that, you know. Now, I might add something here. If you had, okay, we're going to stop.